Wes Anderson is back with his new feature film, The Phoenician Scheme, starring Benicio del Toro as Jaja Corda. Wikipedia describes this as a espionage dark comedy, which, sure. And it follows Corda as he tries to mend his relationship with his daughter so that he can find an heir as he's putting together one of his greatest uh, business schemes yet, if you will, the Phoenician scheme. What is the Phoenician scheme exactly? It's not entirely clear. What we do know is he is going to use slaves to revolutionize the infrastructure of Phoenicia for decades to come. And there's only one problem. People out to get him have manipulated the price of rivets to the point where there's a large gap in cost that needs to be covered to complete the project. And so Corda and his daughter Liesel go around down the list of business partners looking for people who can fill the gap. Where do I start with this movie? First off, let me just say I am one of those people who kind of struggled a little bit with French Dispatch and Asteroid City. French Dispatch I struggled with a lot more. Uh, Asteroid City, I was kind of more on its wavelength, but I just couldn't really figure those movies out. I didn't understand why he wanted to tell those stories. Asteroid City made a bit more sense to me, but still I was just kind of lost as to the purpose of it all. Phoenician Scheme, I really just got along with a lot better. I felt like I understood what it was going for. I thought it was such a great example of his mastery over his late stage style of filmmaking. And I really, really enjoyed this one. I'd put it right up there on the top tier of Wes Anderson's movies. Um, he gets amazing performances out of his cast as usual. Benicio as the lead is hilarious. Mia Threepleton has amazing chemistry with him and is similarly hilarious. Michael Cera, he's really in his element here. He is a Wes Anderson guy through and through. He has one scene in particular that you will know when you get to. It is very, very just. It is silly. Um, Jeffrey Wright, another standout side character in this one, where just like as soon as he appears, he starts speaking, and I lost it. Your mileage is gonna vary with this movie, but I thought it was funny as hell. Like this movie had me laughing like crazy. Um, and I think if you're not on the wavelength with its humor, maybe it's not gonna be the movie for you. The first 30 minutes, it spends a long time setting up the main characters' relationships. And I'm sitting there laughing really hard. If you aren't finding that funny, you're probably wanting to walk out of the movie theater. So his production design on point. Like I said, he just has a mastery over this style of filmmaking at this point. The sets, there's this plane that Corda rides in, and it is just so beautiful. I'm looking at the seats, and I'm like, damn, I want to sit in those seats. People's costumes. I got a kick out of Liesel's nun costume. There is something just so like perfect about Liesel's nun costume. His bathroom, the bathroom that the intro is staged in, with the tiled floor and the layout. It's just insane. And it's not just like Wes Anderson relying on like symmetrical sets and props and shit like that. It's really beautiful design. And one thing that I'll also say there is it actually feels like actual locations, more so than like French Dispatch and Asteroid City, which most of the time felt to me like were taking place like on a stage. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think those movies were going for that effect, but I appreciated the kind of movement towards the more real space while still retaining that eye for production design and cinematography. This is also something where I think coming together into this end of the second and the third act, the the story beats really hit for me. I thought emotionally it landed, intensity wise, especially like the finale, it really landed. And maybe some people have a harder time getting attached to Wes Anderson's characters because of how they talk or speak. Certain movies are harder than others, but I think that in this one he really finds that balance of like actually making you care about these characters. The structure of this movie I thought was great. Like French Dispatch, Asteroid City, I felt were a lot more disjointed. I mean, like French Dispatch is an anthology. Asteroid City I felt had a lot going on because it kind of paints out this mosaic of the location and all the characters in it. Versus this one has a pretty great structure for which Wes Anderson can kind of just insert a scene slash skit with actors that he wants to work with, and it doesn't feel out of place or like he's just jamming shit in there. I'm going to get into spoiler territory because I want to talk a little bit about what I felt this movie was about. And that's one thing that, like I said, I enjoyed more than Asteroid City and French Dispatch because it was not as impenetrable, if you will. So, on the surface, of course, it's going after a lot of themes, which, by the way, let me just add this too. People want to clown on Wes Anderson because he, makes the same movies because he has a consistent style across his movies. And sure, he has similar elements in many of his films, plot-wise, theme-wise. A lot of great directors do. But you can't sit here and tell me that he's not, talking about different things with each movie. He's obviously, story-wise, theme-wise, aiming for different ideas as time goes on. And so he's not making the same movie. On the surface, obviously, this movie has a lot to say about money, power, industrialism, colonialism. I think it's really interesting how Jaja is kind of this Trump-like figure sometimes in the way that he talks and speaks. But this movie isn't Trump bad, rich people bad. It explores the unethical ways in which wealth is produced and then wielded. But it doesn't come at Jaja from an angle of he's inherently a bad person because he's been driven to become this wealthy person. It takes a much more empathetic look. And it's also about, somebody like that trying to reckon with the consequences of their actions and deciding, how do I want to actually live my life? Specifically, it's talking about how when Korda is confronted with his own mortality with these repeated assassination attempts, he's kind of pushed to change his life. He reflects on himself and he has an actual conscience. He goes from somebody who doesn't want anything to do with any of his kids to, at first, his first plane crash in the beginning makes him want to reconnect with his daughter so she can be an heir. It's still kind of money related. He still doesn't want anything to do with his sons. But by the end of this journey, he's willing to give up all of his wealth to have this project completed and be back with his family. And I think that is just well done. You have a couple other characters like this in the movie too. Bjorn, the spy, kind of reveals himself after they have another plane crash, right? That's when he decides to reveal who he actually is. And Uncle Nubar in the big finale, it's ambiguous as to what actually happens, but my reading of what happens there, he holds up the grenade, he sees flashes of the old pictures that were in the shoebox that Liesel opened, and it's when he has that grenade, he's being confronted with his own mortality because he's about to die. Up until that moment, he was willing to pull the pin and go through with it. But it's in that moment where it's actually about to happen that he actually has the realization of oh fuck, I don't want to do this anymore. It's only when he's confronted with the mortality that he realizes, I'm not going to do this to my brother. And I think that's really powerful. Liesel and Korda are very interesting as a father and daughter. They start off on these extremes where Liesel is a nun. She represents this strict adherence to religious morality. Korda is the opposite. He seems to have very no morals, no ethics. He just is running his businesses, making money, not caring about his kids. And you see how they go and they meet in the middle. They gradually meet in the middle. Liesel becomes more and more secular throughout the movie with her bedazzled props and her drinking more and more intense types of alcohol. And Korda, of course, goes through his character arc where he becomes a much better human being. One thing that I think this movie did that really helped me out, and maybe I missed this in Asteroid City and French Dispatch, although Asteroid City kind of did this, was it gave you a thesis in the middle of the movie. And when I started to think about this, I started to see how it was all through the plot and talking about the creative process as well, and I thought it was pretty interesting. There's a scene where they get one of their partners, Bryan Cranston, or they get two of their partners, Bryan Cranston and Tom Hanks, to cover a part of the gap by winning a bet on a basketball shot. The basketball shot is just it's not going to happen, but they bet a ton of money on it. And Liesel prays for it, and the shot goes in. And as they're flying away, Corda asks Liesel what she prayed for to make the shot go in. And Liesel says something to the effect of, it doesn't matter what I said. What matters is that I said it with sincerity. And I really think that kind of sums up the whole movie. And Corda goes, that's it, right there, right? You go all the way back to the beginning of the movie, and he's going down in the plane, and he calls up air traffic control or whatever, and he's like, I have got a cornfield and a soybean field. Which one should I land in? Which one is going to be softer? And they say inconclusive. And he just has to make a split-second decision and go do it. It's not about what he says. It's about the sincerity. Just crash the fucking plane, man. Like, it doesn't matter whether you land in the corn or the soybeans. It's not going to make a difference. You just have to crash that plane with conviction and land the damn thing and walk away from it. And, like, it speaks to this idea of how you make impossible choices in the creative process. There are no rules. There are no right answers. There is no formula for correct filmmaking, for perfect creativity. When you're putting a movie together, obviously there's better choices that you can make than others when it comes to writing, casting, production, etc. But at the end of the day, you know, you get down to these really minute things, and you're thinking about things like, you know, does this person say it like this, or do they say it like this? And you might have these different takes, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you can't get hung up on that, man. You can't let yourself get hung up on like these little things. What is this tiny little detail that's going to make or break whether or not this works? It's not going to be that little detail that makes it or breaks it. It's just not. And I think that Wes Anderson is speaking towards that idea of how you make kind of impossible choices, you know, choices where you're never going to know the outcome until you're actually there. You can't know ahead of time whether or not you're making the right decision here. And at a certain point, you got to make your decision. You got to stick to it. You got to do it with conviction. And that's what he does in this movie. When he goes to all of his different business partners, he has a variety of schemes. Schemes, you see? He has a variety of schemes to actually get the money out of them. It doesn't matter how he approaches it. What matters is that he approaches it with complete conviction. One more thing there, I think it just speaks to this idea of getting off your ass and doing it. People will wait around for the perfect time to do things. It's not going to happen. There is no perfect time. And at a certain point, you just got to go do it. A couple other things that I just wanted to call out here. I thought it was so funny how there was multiple schemes. You know, there's like the actual Phoenician scheme to build this project, but then there's the scheme to fill the gap. There's the scheme to spy on Corda and raise the price of rivets. I thought it was funny how many different schemes there were. Then there was also this idea of blood ties, you know, relationships between people. Corda has a lot of kids. He's got kind of strained former like marriages and familial relationships. There's Liesel, who may or may not actually be his kid, right? To me, this movie was kind of playing with all these different ideas of like how people can be tied to each other and what that actually looks like. There's the marriage to the second cousin, right? And Nubar at the end is screaming how he has everyone's blood, and Corda is saying, no, you don't. No, you don't. Maybe that's... I don't know how to read that. Here's an idea that just popped into my head right now. Is Nubar saying that, you know, he's connected to everybody? He has a relationship with everybody. And Corda is saying, no, you're not. You're alone. You know, you stand alone. You have nobody's blood. I don't know. If you have any ideas about what the fuck Nubar means when he says he has everybody's blood, leave it in the comments. My friend Elliot did want to put in a kind word here at the end. He says, please like and subscribe to my father's channel. It would be greatly appreciated. There will be more reviews to come, both new and old films. Much thanks.